evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Bob Flannery's retirement party. About a month ago, my boss came into my office and asked me to do a videotape for Bob Flannery's party. This is your life, so to speak. I said I'd like to, but at the time I was very busy, and I tried to get out of it. I said also I felt that the This Is Your Life theme had been overworked, that I told my boss that almost everybody at Evendale, except for perhaps the Xerox repairman, had had a This Is Your Life done for him. My boss smiled and said, do the tape. Oh, by the way, next week I'm doing a tape for the Xerox repairman. So anyway, during the past month I've gone to Bob's house, talked to his wife, talked to his kids, and traced the history of his life. I've collected a bunch of photographs and written a little script, put it all down on video, and it's all right here. Bob Flannery's life. You're all here gathered tonight to see this tape. Well, Stan Adams told me I had to make the tape. He didn't say anything about showing the tape. During the past month, making this tape was really a labor of love. I can't think of a nicer person to dedicate roughly 50, 60 hours worth of my time to. Well, that takes care of that. It was a really explosive tape. Now you're all sitting here all dressed up, no place to go, so I thought of it. Debbie Does Dallas. Now this is entertainment. Can you all see?
Hello, this is John Martin. I just finished my latest film for Lewis Brothers of Detroit, entitled 11. It stars some of the hottest...
We can't do this!
...around.
What do you mean?
Brooke West here.
Oh, come on.
Phaedra. Suzanne Nero.
All right. We'll show the tape now. Will someone go out in the hallway and get Jack Novus back in the room, and also Bob Flannery? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, sit back and enjoy the tape.
He's just a very considerate person. And I think he's always kind of felt, you know, treat people the way you want to be treated.
I think one of the nicest things about Bob, as far as I'm concerned, is that I'm a person that likes to ask questions. I don't like to do things if I don't know why I'm doing them or the reason behind it or how to do it. So I'll ask Bob something, and he's never been too busy to stop whatever he's doing and sit down and explain it to me. He'll say, sit down, lady.
Well, Bob Flannery is certainly an outgoing, dedicated person. He loves people. He loves detail. He loves to have a challenge. He proceeds to solve problems as rapidly as possible, often coming up with novel solutions that are a surprise to everybody.
I hate to use the word devious, but Bob is very good at doing what is necessary to get the job done.
He manages to get a lot of his work done through other people and always comes out just being the poor little innocent guy that didn't understand how all this could be such a problem.
He's extremely reliable, very dependable. He's almost a workaholic. But if he says he's going to do something, he's going to do it.
His worst quality, one, is his driving.
I've driven with him, and God, that's enough. That's an experience.
And we might be at a red light, but you'd have to remind him it had turned green, Bob, time to go.
When you're driving with Bob, Bob is driving, it's very exciting, to say the least, especially if you're sitting in the death seat next to the driver.
When I went in the T&D division, I remember telling Art Fenimore that there were some things I'd do for this company once, but I'd never repeat it, and that was traveling with Bob Flannery driving for 1 week. That was, I deserve battle pay for that.
Would I buy a used car from Bob Flannery? Oh my goodness. I have to think about that, Bob. I have to think about that a while. He's very persuasive in everything, but I have to think about that.
Robert Emmett Flannery Jr. was born in Chicago on December 25, 1923, in St. Mary's Hospital. An only child, his father was a surgeon from Wisconsin, and his mother was a nurse from Kansas. Traveling with his parents, Bob got to see the world at an early age. Wisconsin, Idaho, Alaska, and Europe were among the many vacation spots they visited. Church has always been a big part of Bob's life. As soon as he was old enough, he became an altar boy, and later he captured the lead role next to the bishop as Boy George in the church play. In the 6th grade, Bob played a little basketball for Our Lady of Mount Carmel School in Chicago. Bob's the one in the front row, the only boy wearing black shoes. Even back then, he dared to be different. For high school, Bob packed his bags and went to St. Paul, Minnesota, to St. Thomas Military Academy, another good Jewish school. During these years, Bob earned the rank of first lieutenant, an achievement that would help him later in the Army. After graduation, Bob went on to Notre Dame for 1 year until he was old enough to go into the Army. Even still, at 19, Bob was the youngest first lieutenant ever to be stationed at Fort Sheridan. His stint of service had him at Fort Sheridan, Camp Ellis, France, and England. A brief time in the Army's Cooks and Bakers School taught him to eat Army food as little as possible. Once, while transferring a group of prisoners, Bob was reported AWOL. After he dropped off the prisoners, he went on leave, which was fine, except for the fact that he neglected to get a receipt for the deposit of his prisoners. When he got back to the base, his commander was waiting for him, ready to go to a court-martial. But one of Bob's buddies quietly slipped Bob a receipt for the prisoners just in the nick of time. The commander, much like Bob's bosses today, always felt that Bob was doing something he shouldn't have done, but he just couldn't prove it. After the Army, Bob went back to Notre Dame to continue his studies. In his spare time, he played poker, was a spotter for the radio football broadcasters, and developed a keen interest in photography, both movies and still photography. In 1948, Bob graduated from Notre Dame with a degree in business administration. Just by looking at Bob, even at age 13, you can tell that he was a born salesman, so it only made sense that his first job out of Notre Dame was in sales. He worked for the United Shoe Machinery Corporation, selling cutting dies and eyelets. One of his responsibilities was to find new uses for eyelets. It frightens us to think that there are probably still Eskimos in Alaska who have their igloos held together with the eyelets Bob sold them. One of the most important sales jobs Bob ever had was when he met this young lady, Patricia Ann Fitzgerald. On Christmas break from Marymount College in Tarrytown, New York, Patsy met Bob at a Christmas party. He was dating another girl at the time, but he wanted to broaden his horizons.
There were a group of them, and he was looking for dating somebody else, and there was no way he could date in that group having taken her out. That just wasn't done. And I think his idea was to take me out, and then that would kind of give him an entree into the other group and several of the other girls.
Bob never had a chance with the other girls. After his first date with Patsy at the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, they knew they were in love. Just a little more than a year later, they were married at St. Jerome's Church in Chicago. In March of 1954, Robert E. Flannery joined Formica Corporation's Chicago office and was assigned to promote the product to architects, designers, and decorators. He must have been confident with his career with Formica because he purchased a house in Chicago on his very first day of work. Bob's career with Formica has carried him through 2 cyanamide divisions, 10 jobs, 3 cities, and about 25 bosses. All 10 of his jobs were in marketing and usually included some sort of training and promotion work. Even though Bob was obviously having a good time at Formica, he moved over to the Transportation Division in 1976 to help solve some of their problems.
When we used to work at T&D, the distribution center manager, Marion Moore, he and Bob had a running joke between them all the time, and they would get mad at each other, or at least they would act like they were mad, and they would use me as their straight person in between. And Marion wouldn't speak to Bob. He'd call me and he'd say, "You go tell Bob that I want to eat lunch at 11:30. I say, Bob, he wants to eat lunch at 11:30. Bob say, you tell him I'm busy. I run back and tell. So I was the in-between, and that used to be funny to watch the two of them back and forth.
We were at a meeting in Wayne up in the Poconos, and we'd had a few drinks, of course. And Art had a few, and I went over and asked him. I said, and Bob, he was all wound up, and I asked Art. I said, go call Bob over and tell him he's being transferred to Wayne. And I didn't think he'd really do it. And I went back to my table, and I was sitting there, and all of a sudden I looked up, and there was Bob over there talking to Art Whitimore. And Bob was just as quiet, which is unusual, of course, very serious looking, turning a little pale. I said, oh, God, he's really telling him that. Then all of a sudden, Bob, he just jumped up from the table and started walking off. I thought, oh, God, he might have a heart attack. So I took off after him through the lobby of this huge hotel, saying, Bob, wait, Bob, wait. It was all a joke. And by that time, Bob realized it was, and all the way around, he's a son bitch. Don't get mad, I just get even. I just don't get mad. He's never forgiven me for that. It really scared me. I thought he was going to have a heart attack. I really did.
Bob knows very well when to kid and when to get serious. The proof is in the pudding, and in this case, the pudding was American Cyanamon's Golden Oval Award, presented to Bob for outstanding sales achievement in 1961. The city of Cincinnati recognized Bob in 1968 as a benefactor of the city for his role as a business leader and for helping to make the city a better place to live. Outside of work, Bob leads an active life as chairman of 2 committees for the National Society of Training Executives and as an advisory board member of Xavier's Institute for Business and Community Services, as an advisor in sales education for Cincinnati Technical College, as a member of the American Society of Training and Development, and finally, as a financial advisor for his church. Certainly the biggest joy in Bob's life is his family. His 7 children, ages 34 to 23, are scattered all over the country. Ann is in Idaho working with the deaf. Bridget is in Oregon working with exceptional children. Patrick is in Dallas working with Ryder Trucks. Robert is in Cincinnati working at Chester's Roadhouse. Michael is touring the country working as a comedian. And Celia is in Cincinnati working for Arthur Anderson. 3 members of the Flannery household that don't have to move to the West Coast just to get away from Bob's corny jokes and insufferably long stories are his dogs, Bruce and Deacon, and his cat, Murray. On Bob and Patsy's 25th wedding anniversary, the entire family gathered together to plan a gala celebration in which Bob and Patsy exchange wedding vows one more time. In his spare time, Bob enjoys designing and building miniatures.
Everybody keeps saying, you must have a lot of patience to do this. Now, knowing Bob, you know he doesn't always have a lot of patience, but he seems to do very well with this. And it's great because he doesn't play golf and he doesn't play tennis and a lot of those things that other people do, and it gives him something to do when he has time on his hands. And yet it's something that you can do a little here and a little there, and it's been very interesting for him. And I think sometimes he's amazed what he's been able to do.
Other hobbies of Bob's include watching television, especially MASH and reruns of old shows, and listening to and collecting music from the 40s. When WMLX in Cincinnati switched formats from 40s music to rock, Bob went into a severe depression. Bing Crosby, Benny Goodman, Ella Fitzgerald, and the Mills Brothers are the groups Bob likes to listen to. For retirement, Bob and Patsy are moving to the desert climate of Boise, Idaho.
We're going to move to Boise, and right now we're looking at a planned development area called River Run, which is not too far from the Boise River. In fact, the edge of it is actually on the Boise River. And then it has streams, I guess you'd call them, that come in off the river that wind throughout the area. But it's almost in downtown Boise. And Bob plans on doing some consulting and some teaching and things like that. There are several large companies out there. And Boise State University is there, so that you do have a lot of the cultural things that a university will have, and they have a very fine art museum and a very fine natural history museum and theater and ballet, symphony.
Well, Bob, your career at Formica is over, but your new career is just starting. We wish you the best of luck and the best of health for you and your family. Now go out there and go for it.
On the road again, the big red F is back on the road again. There were some doubts, but we always knew that you would win. Thanks to you, Formica.